Today we're doing predictions for South Carolina and Texas A&M. One of these teams is trying to finally make the playoffs, and one of these teams is just trying to have a fresh start. Let's go. Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's me again, Golden Blue Dude. If you haven't already, go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button. I do college football videos every single day. Right now is the best time to hit that subscribe button. I'm in the middle of my preseason predictions. I've done 42 teams so far, so you can go back and watch those predictions. And don't sit there and lie to me. I know you're starving for college football content. The college football season is getting closer and closer. Don't forget to check out my friends at Tri-State Wood Sketch. All you have to do is send him a picture, and he'll turn it into a beautiful piece of art on wood. Check out his website at www.tristatewoodssketch.com. Tell him Golden Blue Dude sent you and you'll get 20% off. Today we're looking at South Carolina and Texas A&M. South Carolina hired a new head coach and are trying to recapture the glory days that they had under Steve Spurrier. For Texas A&M, so close to getting to the playoffs. They're trying to keep the momentum going and perhaps make the playoffs this year. First up, we'll talk about South Carolina. Will Muschamp was finally fired. Personally, I don't think he ever should have been hired for the South Carolina head coaching position. They went out and hired Shane Beamer. I applaud South Carolina for doing this. I think this was a good hire. It was definitely time to go in a different direction. Instead of recycling the same old head coaches, reusing them. No, stop doing that. And Shane Beamer was actually part of that success that South Carolina had under Steve Spurrier. Shane Beamer hasn't even coached one game at South Carolina. He's already brought more energy and excitement than Will Muschamp did in his entire 5 years. So it's already looking great for South Carolina. First, we'll look at South Carolina's offense. Last year, it was downright pathetic. They averaged 23.5 points per game, that's 99th, and averaged 355.1 yards a game. Let's look at the quarterback battle that's going on in Columbia. By the way, guys, there are some tricky names on both of these rosters, so I probably will mispronounce some names. The first quarterback, Luke Doty. Last year, he was 43 for 71, that's 60.6%, threw for 405 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 3 interceptions. Slight dual threat quarterback. 41 carries for 91 yards, that's 2.2 yards a carry. The other quarterback in this quarterback battle, Jason Brown, the St. Francis transfer. In 2019, he was 251 for 403, that's 62.3%, threw for 3,089 yards, 28 touchdowns, just 6 interceptions. He is very ready to prove himself at South Carolina. Now let's look at the running game. I think South Carolina might have an improved running game this year, starting with running back Kevin Harris. Last year, 185 carries for 1,138 yards, that's 6.2 yards a carry and 15 touchdowns. But don't forget about the incoming 4-star recruit, running back Marshawn Lloyd. He's 5'9", 211 pounds. Now let's look at South Carolina's passing game. This is where they need to improve dramatically. It was horrible last year, starting with their tight ends. Tight end Nick Muse, 30 receptions for 425 yards and 1 touchdown. Incoming 2-star recruit tight end E.J. Jenkins. He's 6'5", 215 pounds. Now the wide receiving core. These are the guys that really need to step up this year. Wide receiver Trey Smith, 9 receptions for 69 yards, 1 touchdown. Wide receiver Jalen Brooks, 11 receptions for 100 yards. Wide receiver Josh Vann, 10 receptions for 88 yards and 1 touchdown. Wide receiver Ikarion Joyner, 7 receptions for 55 yards, 1 touchdown. Wide receiver Rico Powers, 2 receptions for 19 yards. And wide receiver Jakari Caldwell, 1 reception for 5 yards. South Carolina has got to figure out a way to generate explosive plays. The offense was very stagnant last year, had trouble moving the chains. Shane Beamer has got to figure out how to solve that this year. Now let's look at their defense. As bad as the offense was, the defense might have been worse last year. Last year, they allowed 36 points per game, that's 105th, and allowed 451.5 yards a game. They will have depth and experience at the D-line, but they did have a key loss with linebacker Ernest Jones. So the front 7 is still a work in progress, but I do think the defensive line will be the strength. We're going to try to run a 4-2-5, so that will alleviate some pressure on those linebackers. Let's start with the defensive line. Defensive end Jordan Birch, 19 tackles, 9 by himself. Defensive tackle Zach Pickens, 35 tackles, 16 by himself, 1 sack. Defensive tackle Jabari Ellis, 27 tackles, 11 by himself, and a half a sack. Defensive end Kingsley Ignabor, 30 tackles, 16 by himself, 6 sacks, 3 forced fumbles. Now the linebacking core. Linebacker Damani Staley, 51 tackles, 28 by himself, 1 pass deflection. Linebacker Sherrod Green, 35 tackles, 24 by himself, half a sack. That was in 2019. Linebacker Muhammad Kaba, 13 tackles, 4 by himself. The Gamecocks are very thin in the secondary, but there is some experience coming back, starting with their cornerbacks. Cornerback Cam Smith, last year he had 16 tackles, 10 by himself, 2 interceptions, and 2 pass deflections. Incoming 3-star recruit, quarterback Dominic Hill. He's 6 foot, 188 pounds. Safety R.J. Roderick, 23 tackles, 16 by himself, 1 pass deflection. Safety O'Donnell Fortune, 3 tackles, 2 by himself. himself. Nickelback David Spalding, the Georgia Southern transfer. 7 tackles, 4 by himself, 1 interception, which he returned for a touchdown, and 1 pass deflection. In the dime, Jalen Foster, Gardner Webb transfer. 43 tackles, 25 by himself. Honestly, I think Shane Beamer's first year at South Carolina will be better than Will Muschamp's last year at South Carolina. I do think South Carolina has an outside shot of making the bowl. But this schedule is a little tricky. Let's take a look at South Carolina's 2021 college football schedule. First up, a home game against Eastern Illinois. Win. At East Carolina. Win. They are a terrible team. At Georgia. Loss. Kentucky at home. Loss. Troy at home. Win. At Tennessee. I know Tennessee's bad, but this is a road game. I'm going to say it's a loss. Vanderbilt at home. Win. At Texas A&M. I'll predict that at the end of this video. They get their bye week. Florida at home. Loss. At Missouri. Loss. Auburn at home. I think this is where they pull an upset and beat a team they're not supposed to. Win. Clemson at home. Loss. So overall, depending on the Texas A&M prediction, I have South Carolina going either 6-6 or 5-7. By the way, last year South Carolina was 2-8, 6th in the SEC East. Now let's talk about Texas A&M. Last year they finished the season 9-1, 2nd in the SEC West, and their preseason ranking is number 6. High expectations in College Station. The big question for Texas A&M is, can Jimbo Fisher capitalize on the momentum from a 9-1 season in 2020? Top priority, getting over that Alabama hump and getting to the playoffs this year. Jimbo Fisher has been having a lot of top 10 recruiting classes at Texas A&M, so talent, not a problem. The bad news for the offense is 4 of their 5 offensive linemen are gone, and they did lose their quarterback Kellen Mond. So an inexperienced quarterback packaged with an offensive line that's not proven, that's the one big hiccup that Texas A&M might have this year. They also have an interesting quarterback battle going on. First quarterback Zach Calzada, 12 for 24, 50%, for 133 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. Then the dual threat quarterback. People are really high on this guy. Quarterback Haynes King. He was 2 of 4, 50%, 59 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception, but also ran the ball 6 times, 43 yards, 7.2 yards a carry. I do think Texas A&M will have a strong running game. They'll have that dual threat quarterback and a great running back to go along with him. Running back Isaiah Spiller, 188 carries for 1,036 yards. That's 5.5 yards a carry and 9 touchdowns. Now let's look at Texas A&M's passing game. Whoever wins the quarterback position will have a ton of amazing targets to throw to. Starting with their tight end. Tight end Jalen Whiterfire, 46 receptions for 506 yards and 6 touchdowns. Now the wide receiving core. Wide receiver Chase Lane, 29 receptions for 409 yards and 2 touchdowns. Wide receiver Hezekiah Jones, 18 receptions for 178 yards. Wide receiver Jalen Preston, 7 receptions for 74 yards. Wide receiver Caleb Chapman, 14 receptions for 197 yards and 3 touchdowns. Incoming 5-star wide receiver Damon Demas, 6'3", 180 pounds. He could eventually earn a starting spot on that wide receiving core. Wide receiver Anaya Smith, 43 receptions for 564 yards and 6 touchdowns. He could also help with the running game because he's a good running back to go along with that. 49 carries for 293 yards at 6 yards a carry and 4 touchdowns. So the biggest question on the offense is the quarterback and that offensive line. Now let's look at the defense. Texas A&M is going to have a pretty good front 7. Did have 1 key loss on the defensive line. Defensive tackle Bobby Brown III. The rest of the defensive line is back. Same scenario with the linebackers. They lost linebacker Buddy Johnson, but the rest of the linebackers are back as well. Last year, Texas A&M's defense allowed 16.2 points per game, that's 28, and allowed 317.3 yards a game. Let's start with their defensive line. Defensive end Marvin Leal, 37 tackles, 18 by himself, 2.5 sacks, 1 forced fumble, 1 interception, and 1 pass deflection. Defensive tackle McKinley Jackson, 13 tackles, 3 by himself, 1.5 sacks, and 2 pass deflections. Defensive tackle Jaden Peavy, 34 tackles, 13 by himself, 1 sack, 1 pass deflection. Defensive end Michael Clemens, 14 tackles, 7 by himself, 4 sacks. Now the linebacking core. Linebacker Aaron Hansford, 49 tackles, 17 by himself, 3 sacks, 1 pass deflection. Linebacker Edgerrin Cooper, 2 solo tackles last year. Incoming 3-star recruit linebacker Terrion Lee Jr., 6'2", 233 pounds. And linebacker Andre White Jr., 32 tackles, 10 by himself, 1.5 sacks, 1 interception, and 3 pass deflections. As good as that front 7 could be, the secondary for Texas A&M could actually be the strength for this defense. Everybody is back from last year's secondary, and it was a good secondary. Starting with the cornerbacks. Cornerback Miles Jones, 39 tackles, 30 by himself, 1 interception, 5 pass deflections. Cornerback Jalen Jones, 30 tackles, 22 by himself, 1 interception, 6 pass deflections. Safety Leon O'Neal Jr., 48 tackles, 32 by himself, 2 interceptions, and 3 pass deflections. Safety Damani Richardson, 36 tackles, 25 by himself, 1 interception, 1 pass deflection. Nickelback Antonio Johnson, 14 tackles, 8 by himself, 1 pass deflection. To me, it seems like Texas A&M has everything to win the SEC and get to the playoffs. They even get Alabama at home this year. Except for there's that one thing. They'll be breaking in an inexperienced quarterback, and offensive line is full of new faces. That's the only thing that's holding me back from penciling them in the playoffs for sure. Let's take a look at Texas A&M's 2021 college football schedule. First, they get Kent State at home. Win. At Colorado. Win. New Mexico at home. Win. They get Arkansas in Arlington. Win. Mississippi State at home. Win. Alabama at home. Win. Yes, I think the Aggies do beat beat Alabama this year. At Missouri, that's going to be tough, but win. South Carolina at home. I'll predict that here in just a minute. Then they get their bye week. Then Auburn at home. Win. Then at Ole Miss. This probably will be a night game, and Ole Miss is going to be loaded on the offensive side of the ball. I think Texas A&M drops this game. Loss. After that, they get Prairie View A&M. Win. They end the season at LSU. That also will probably be a night game. And LSU is going to be pretty good as well. I think that's another loss for Texas A&M to end the season. So overall, I have Texas A&M going either 10-2 or 9-3, depending on that South Carolina prediction. Now for the game prediction itself. South Carolina at Texas A&M. I'm not going to beat around the bush. This is going to be a blowout. Texas A&M will blow out South Carolina. I think the final score will be in the neighborhood of 49-17, something like that. South Carolina is just too depleted, and Texas A&M is just going to be too good. Both these teams have a quarterback battle going on, but the Aggies have way more targets on offense than South Carolina does, and it is in College Station. This is going to be an easy win for Texas A&M. So overall, I have South Carolina going 5-7, but one of those other games could flip over to South Carolina. They could go on the road and beat Tennessee and get to a bowl. That would be an amazing accomplishment for Shane Beamer in his first year at South Carolina. For Texas A&M, I have them going 10-2. They have the recipe to get to the playoffs, but an inexperienced quarterback and a new offensive line combined with those 2 road trips at the end of the year, I do think Texas A&M will drop 2 games. That is a rough way to end your season at Ole Miss and at LSU. Those will be extremely hostile environments, and the teams that they'll be playing will be pretty good. I just think there's too many roadblocks in Texas A&M's way for them to get to the playoffs this year. That's all I got for you for this show. Like and subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you on my next show.